Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 128. Can you, as I choke just a second, I'll do a 3, 2, 1 countdown. 3,
okay.
2, 1. Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 128. Can you believe it's 128 episodes of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And today, my guest fits that bill so well. I can't wait to introduce you to Karli Moch, and she's got a huge bio that I will tell you about. But I want to start by saying, Karli, we have intersected in the past, 2 weeks, a whole bunch of times. We have both met at different coffee shops, not met together. We didn't mean to meet together, but we ended up, colliding in a positive way. And it just said to me, we need to have this interview. And I don't know how you feel about that, Karli, but it's almost like something greater than both of us.
Yep. I feel like that is the basis of everything that has gone on in my life in the last 5 years specifically. But there's no coincidence in that for sure. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you, and definitely God winks moments of getting us together over the last couple of weeks for sure.
Oh, I love that you said God winks. That's it's so funny because, of course, that's a coincidence too. I use that term in my course that I'm teaching. That's
awesome.
So,
I love that.
So funny. So just for those of you who might not know Karli, I love your bio when you say, welcome to my course corrected career after facing a life-altering health challenge. So Karli is currently the director of mission development for Bio Girls, which I have to be completely honest, when I first heard Bio Girls, I thought it had something to do with biology and like STEM.
You're not
really.
You're not alone. Yeah, you're not alone. Yeah.
Bio actually means beautiful inside and out. And it's such an amazing platform for adolescent girls. And I'm going to let you talk more about that, Karli. But on top of that, Karli's got a kind of a backstory that leads into another really super great reason for our conversation today. She's venturing into the world of authorship, and I want her to tell you about that as well. So Karli, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to be with me today.
Yes, thank you for having me. This is super exciting, and I've only had a few podcast interviews, but every single time I just enjoy the conversation and have no doubt that our conversation will be great. So thanks for having me.
So you want to start by just telling us a little bit about you, how you got to be where you are, who you are, how that shaped you, how your upbringing maybe shaped you?
Yeah, absolutely. So like she mentioned, I'm Karli Moch. I was born and raised here in West Fargo, North Dakota. So didn't fly away from the nest very far. Had my years of traveling in different roles that I've played, but I kind of like to say that I am unapologetically myself, and beyond that, I play different roles. So try not to let those roles define who I am, but roles that I do play, I've got 2 kiddos of my own, and so I play that role of mom every single day, all night, and I get to be the director of mission development. And I get to be an advocate for things that I'm very passionate about that have affected my life, such as infertility, chronic illness, and adoption. And so those are things that I have found to be a new purpose in my life. But I feel like honestly, it kind of seems like every 5 years or every decade, it seems to shift. And so purpose to me is a much bigger and broader thing than I used to think. You had to find one purpose, and that was your purpose forever. But learning more and more about what that really means. And my purpose now is to just be present and in the moment. And then it goes on to the next moment, and just being very present and mindful with conversations and relationships. So.
But you said a lot there. There's a lot we can unpack just in that first statement, because there are details about that I'd like to know. Where did you go to school? What did you do? What did you think your life was going to be? All of those questions. But I want everybody to notice what you said when you said who you are at your core is the purpose in the moment. And then the roles you play are distinct. And I love that distinction that you set up, because there's a core being in all of us that does things. The doing part is what I hear you saying changes every decade or so. But the being part is constant for all of us. And I love that distinction.
Yeah.
So how did you
absolutely nail that?
How did you decide what you wanted to? Let's go to the do part, because the doing, I think, is what people get first. We don't get the being first, I don't think.
Correct. Yeah, for sure. So I mean, growing up, I think I have undiagnosed ADD now that I'm like an adult and can look back, but I never was great at school. I think I could have been had I applied myself more, but I was much more interested in friendships and relationships and conversation. And so the classic student of check mark after check mark and talking. I don't think they give check marks anymore, but they definitely did when I was in school. And I was definitely one of those individuals. But it's funny how that comes full circle. And now I literally talk for a living. And so I think that, like, knowing that from way back when I was young, it just goes to show that you don't need to be this cookie cutter of success. What does that look like? You have to have a bachelor's degree, a master's to be successful, or a different title at a job to keep being successful. And I really don't think I identified with any roles like I just mentioned until I got out of school and started to get jobs and positions. And then society kind of dumped that on me and a lot of people, where I was concerned with that. And I lived 5-10 years in that role, really 10 years probably in that climbing up the ladder roles. And in the meantime, there was relationships that were suffering, and got truly away from what I am good at and what I used to attract, which was the people and the connection, because I was focused on ego driven things rather than, divine purpose things. So, I think through really illness, it took that moment of, I was lucky, I think, to face what I faced at the time in my life, which was at 30 years old, because it gave me a shove into perspective and what life is really truly about, and back to using my gifts for a greater good. So
I'm glad you said how old you were, because I was going to ask you that. For those of you listening, Karli's, you're not much older than 30, are you now?
35 this month. Yep.
Okay, so 35. So put yourself, if you're listening, into the space you were when you were 35, if you're older than that. And you said an illness, which we'll talk about in a second, caused you to kind of wake up and say, what's really important? Get me back to what was important to me before I knew not to pursue the things that were important to me. And I hear you at 35, and I wish that I had known what you know at 35, because I'm just learning it now in my 50s. And so I am so excited for the future you are going to be part of, leading, not only in our community, but throughout where the places you touch because of your book now. So let's jump back. Something happened. You were following the corporate ladder. You were climbing the things you're supposed to do. They tell you what to do. Another thing you said before we get into that, you said, I didn't really know what I wanted to do until society started telling me that. And I think we could talk forever about the way things are set up. You're supposed to know what you want to do at 18 and go to get a degree in that thing. And how do we know at 18? How do we know that?
I couldn't agree more. And I honestly used to have a lot of shame built around, I have a 2-year degree at M State here, and I carried shame with that. I was never like announcing what I ended up with. I started at MSUM. Again, socializing became way more important to me. I started not going to class, not applying myself, fell back into those habits. And so wasted a lot of money and time. And again, like you mentioned, at 18, you don't know what you're doing. And so I feel like that's a whole nother conversation we could have, but did end up going and getting a 2-year degree in sales marketing management. And I remember going back to, I think I was cheering on my old high school team. I had some girls that I nannied, and I ran into a teacher of mine, and he was asking what I was doing, and told him I was in sales. And all of a sudden he's like, no way, you're talking for a living. Well, shocker, so it fully, like, taking that shame away from having a 2-year degree, and went on to be very successful in corporate America because of the different gifts I had, not being able to apply in school, but being able to have a relationship and attract relationships. You can't teach that as well. So just really understanding that that is a gift, and I don't need to be ashamed of the other part I don't have, because nobody has it all. And so just really tapping into what you do have.
That's so funny, because I have all the certificates and all the degrees, and I have a master's degree. I have everything because that's how you were supposed to do it. But to this day, not one person has ever asked to see my life coaching certification, my bachelor's degree, my master's degree. Nobody cares. And so I think you and I come to the same place from two different ways. I was so scared to do it wrong.
Yeah.
You followed your natural instincts. But we're getting to the same place, which is being authentic, being real, figuring out who you are and allowing the world to share in that discovery.
Yeah.
So something happened. You had a job, you were doing well, you were climbing the corporate ladder. Tell me what happened.
Yeah. So very stressful roles, as many can probably relate to, being in that structure of very corporate. I felt like I was, my ego, I'll just say it, took over. I mean, I was 100% in it for the next position, in it for the accolades, for beating goals. I mean, everything's a profit and loss. So you are literally, that's what you live and breathe and are measured on. And I was doing well because of the relationship building. Honestly, I still was able to use that, but it was using it for selling Mountain Dew that was really not helping anybody, So I didn't really realize any of that until I got sick, and I started getting symptoms soon after I had Dawson, our firstborn, of just kind of some pain and some bleeding. And I just thought that came with the territory of having a child, and didn't really tell anybody. I didn't think anything else. And it would come and go. It was very infrequent. And so it took till 9 months after I started having symptoms for me to really take it more seriously, mainly because my body wouldn't allow me to do anything but that. And so I went in and was immediately referred to GI department, and had a colonoscopy at the age of 30, and came out with a diagnosis of ulcerative colitis, which is inflammation and ulcers in your lower GI tract. And even when I got diagnosed, I still was oblivious to what it was. I had never heard of it. The doctor basically said, here's a script and you can manage it with here, and we'll see you in 6 months. It was in and out. I had no reason to believe that it would get any worse. And so within 30 days, I was in for a rude awakening, and it did get worse. And it went from moderate diagnosis to very severe, and had 2 admissions, 1 admission and then 5 days at home, and then back in the hospital throughout almost the entire month of December and over Christmas, with a 1-year-old at home. And it shook our entire life. I was withering away and very near death until we had 3 surgeries that ultimately saved my life. And lived with a temporary stoma, so an ostomy bag, for 6 months, having a 1-year-old, and really affected the way that I was able to parent. There were some dark times, but throughout that, had great support, which I think is huge. And there was never a day where I didn't have a visitor. And I can't imagine during the thick of the pandemic, when people were in there alone, absolutely breaks my heart, because I don't think that I would have been able to get through it like I did without people, especially me, because I'm a people person, obviously, as we've discussed. But I think just my whole life, I always was an optimistic person, although there were dark times in the midst of that. I still remained positive. And I think that mindset was truly the difference maker in being able to come out of this the way that I did.
So how long did it take you to recover? I mean, you said that was pretty dark. You almost didn't make it. So from the time you were at your lowest till you got back to what you would consider a normal, how long was that?
Yeah. Lowest probably December of 2018, and probably took a full year to get back to somewhat normalcy. I mean, throughout that, I lost all my hair. I lost 30 pounds in 30 days. So I was very, very malnourished. I couldn't eat or drink for almost 2 to 3 months. So I was on IV fluids. That was basically my nutrition. And so it took me a long time to get back to really, really normal. But I'd say that after a year, I really felt like I was getting back into who I was, and really back to the core of who I was almost immediate after that first surgery. My pain was gone. And I couldn't imagine, there was surgery pain, but the pain that I was feeling from the disease was incredibly difficult to manage. And I was on opioid medication for, honestly, I think it was like 90 days straight. And it was multiple different scripts from multiple different doctors, IV medication, like straight into the system. And I got scared afterwards and quit cold turkey. I didn't know that was going to affect anything. It went through a whole other list of things that the doctors couldn't pinpoint until my mom actually said, I think you're going through withdrawals. Wow. I mean, I was having night sweats and migraines and pain and shaking. And I mean, they were sending me for MRIs and blood work, and not a single one had even thought that was maybe what was happening. And that's scary. That was my first look into, holy cow, that is a slippery slope, and you hear about it. But you don't realize how quickly that can happen to a human being. So that was another whole situation. But yeah, I'm just thankful to be where I'm at now and have that perspective. I wouldn't go back there ever. And I wouldn't wish that upon anybody, but I am very grateful for the opportunity it gave me to wake up, and see what's truly important and find beauty from that battle. So,
and I like that you said find beauty from the battle looking back, but you wouldn't want to go there. So I think there are lessons and messages for all of us in the reflection of our lives. So the looking back, but not going back.
100%.
Yeah. Steve Jobs is the guy who said, you can connect the dots of your life looking back, but not looking forward. So this happened, let's say it happened, it could be to you. It happened to you, because that is a way of thinking of it. It could be that it happened for you for some reason. And just recently, I'm understanding a third way to think about things. And maybe it happened through you. And if it happened through you, then there's a message for you to deliver going forward. That's how I hear this affecting you now going forward. So this was in 19 when you felt better. You felt like you were getting back.
Yeah.
And did you what happened with your job during that time?
Yeah, I was struggling to find value in what I was doing. I tried in different ways to get involved in projects that would give me joy, committees, empowering the women within our corporate positions. And through all of that, nothing just seemed to fit. And I hadn't been really giving back to our community. I'm born and raised here. And I was doing nothing outside of my home to serve others. And I just kind of reached out on social media to see what there was that would fall into what I would love to do. And somebody introduced me to Missy Heilman, who is a founder of Bio Girls. And we sat down for coffee. And I had never heard of the organization before. And I kind of told her everything. I mean, since getting sick, I was bound and determined to be an open book about this, because I wanted to be hope for somebody else. I also wanted to be a resource for somebody else, to know that you can get through it, and also just ask questions. And so I told her everything, basically, because within our program, there is physical activity. And honestly, I had just been coming out of surgeries, really wasn't back to myself yet. And she's had this blank stare on her face. And she goes, my dad in this last year was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and had those exact 3 surgeries that you just explained. And not even knowing anybody that had the disease, and then hearing that, it was another one of those God wink moments that was just like, all right, sign me up. When do we start? And I started mentoring at her site 2 weeks later that she leads. And those girls changed my life. The messages that we teach the girls, I needed to hear to really keep restarting my life and getting back onto the track that I know I was meant to be on. And so it quite literally changed my life.
So you started mentoring with them as a volunteer?
Yep.
And that would have been in what year, 2019?
19, yep.
Okay.
So spring of 19.
Okay. And so then spring of 19. I just keep going back because March of 2020, that's when the world changed. And so you were working with them. You still had your regular job. You had now what, a 2-year-old?
Yep. He was like 1.5-ish. Yep. Oh no. Yeah. 2. Yep. 2.5.
So you were busy. You still had this job that you couldn't really find mission for yourself in, but you found something that actually filled your bucket in a volunteer role. So where do we go from here? Because we get to the point where you are now an employee of this organization.
Yeah. So I will say, like, those who are in a corporate job, having a passion outside of it immensely changed the way I showed up to work. And I do think you can find purpose in even the mundane tasks that you do daily. But having something that you're passionate about outside of work can help you show up better at work. So I do want to say that did help me over that year until the pandemic, and that all shifted. But in that next year, a couple months prior to starting with BioGirls, I had another call from, we suffered for infertility with our firstborn, and we wanted to start thinking about building our family. I was kind of getting a little healthier. And so I had some similar tests done that we did initially, and found out that throughout those surgeries, I now have pelvic adhesive disease, which is blocked of fallopian tubes. And so I wouldn't be able to get pregnant on my own again. And the risk factors of us going through reproductive health for my condition would be very, very risky. And so we decided to adopt. And so in that same time frame, we had opened up and tried to connect with a birth mom on our own. And we did end up doing that, which is amazing. And we adopted our son in the thick of the pandemic from the first day he was born. So another beautiful thing that came out of this incredibly difficult time. But when the pandemic did hit, my job became 10 times more stressful. And the ways that management was handling things did not align with what I was doing. And speaking of like God moments, I was very much rediscovering my faith over those couple of years, and actually having a relationship with God and not just going to church for the first time in my life. And I truly believe that is a huge difference maker in the way things spiraled so quickly at a much quicker rate. I was just on a different frequency than I had ever been. And I asked him for a very specific sign, and the lotus flower had become my symbol of strength. And for those that don't know, a lotus flower symbolizes strength and growth through challenging times, because that flower only grows within the thick of mud. And so I asked him for a purple lotus. I could not have gotten more specific if I needed to shift where I was headed career-wise. And I went to a charitable event, talked to a couple of gals, and I was like, I need your card. I love what you guys are doing. She slid it across the table, and there's a purple lotus as their logo. I mean, it just was unbelievable, to be honest. And the next week, Missy had called me for coffee again. And she said, what would it take to have you come work for us? And I was basically the worst negotiator of all time, and said, where do I sign? And so I feel like I've had those types of premonitions, or whatever you want to call it, like as long as I can remember, to be honest. But after I got sick and really tapped back into my faith and really grew my faith, it seems like those happen more and more, and things just have happened so much quicker. So
tell me the timing of that.
Of the job?
Yeah.
So yeah, we met honestly, I think it was right before the pandemic hit. And originally she was thinking May of 2020 for this position. Pandemic hit, and she's like, we gotta put this on hold, or it's like for sure not May, because we don't even know if we're gonna make it or what we're gonna do. And so that was not a fun thing to hear, as you think you're like about to get out and onto something that you're passionate about. But actually it was perfect timing. We then connected with Simon's birth mom and found out that we would have him in June. And so it couldn't have worked out any better. And there was no coincidence there either, for her to shift that position to be in September. So I was able to have him and get him acquainted with our family and us to kind of have this new normal before switching to that role. And so it all worked out as it should. So
I just love how you're telling the story sort of matter of factly. This happened and then this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to really recognize that our own design for our lives and our control and the challenge some of us have with letting go and allowing things to happen. You've just shown how there's always a divine plan. And if we step into the faith of that and trust of that, it works out better than it would have had we been in charge. And
100%.
Your story.
That's a hard thing to do. It is a hard thing to do. I do believe that again, it all stems back to that challenging time. The best thing I got from that is little to no fear. I mean, I still get nervous, but I can't tell you something that I'm fearful of. Maybe like jumping out of a plane, but it truly let me surrender. And I think that's the best gift I could have been given, because I just truly am living day to day, where I used to, what's my 5-year plan? What's my 10-year plan? And, oh, I got to do this and this and this. And it's less about doing and it's more about being. And that was the biggest gift I think that came out of everything. So.
Wow. Okay. So everybody who's been listening to Circle Up and Get Real for any length of time has heard me say things like this, but Karli, we did not plan this. We did not plan what we were going to be talking about here. I just want people to understand that once you are awakened to something, you will see it everywhere. And once your reticular activating system is opened up, you will notice what you're looking for. And I think for many of us, like you said earlier, we're looking for the next opportunity and how to climb the ladder and the 5-year plan and all of the doing of things, because that's the way we've been conditioned and programmed. There's nothing wrong here. It's just that if we were, like you said, surrender, and if we were able to allow ourselves to do that, I think we would notice that there is a much less fearful place out there waiting for us to step into it.
100%. Yeah.
So, Director of Mission Development, tell me about that title.
I love that title. I mean, I do all things to raise awareness and raise funds for the growth of our mission, which is to build the self-esteem and mental wellness of our adolescent girls in our community and beyond. We cover 5 states, but very heavily in North Dakota and Minnesota. And I get to do, I don't think I could do as good of a job as I am had I not volunteered and had this passion so organically in my life leading up to it. It could not have been a better fit for me to jump into this. And it truly all revolves around relationships, where I just could not be happier. I'm the busiest I've ever been during the day, every day. And I've never been more energized when I've gotten home, which tells me that, yes, you're going to have stress and quote unquote busyness, because I don't love that word, but no matter which job or which role or which direction you go, but when you go home energized at the end of the day, that's when you know you're on that right path. When you're going home drained and crabby and taking it out on others, that's when you might need to look at what you're doing. And I could not be more proud to be talking about our mission and growing it every single day.
Love it, love it, love it. So this leads us to the next amazing, fun, awesome project that you're in the middle of.
Yes.
Tell us about your book.
Yeah, so another funny thing, back in 2018, I was doing this, like, what? I feel like the conversations and how I talk to God or my faith and has always just been like, it comes in my head and it's like, where did that come from kind of thing. And so throughout my illness, I had journaled constantly because I like how you said, we don't want to go back there. But I wanted to keep it with me because I never want to forget what that was and how I came out of it, because that forges me forward every single day. I didn't want to forget the thing that absolutely changed my life for the better in the outcome. And so journaling and really getting the reality of how bad it was. I wanted those moments so I can look back at those, and it was bad. I mean, I could not walk up my own stairs. I could not hold my kid. I couldn't get into a car. And so all of these things I wanted, because you can easily forget. It's like when they say childbirth, oh, you'll forget. You kind of do. But I didn't want to. And so I was looking back at all my notes and I was like, I got this. I think you should write a book. And I had that like, all right, 5 years from now, hopefully I'll have a book. And then I just was out of my mind. And until this last December of 2021, I had sent Macy, who is our marketing director here, one of my old journal posts that popped up on a memory, because that's what I like to see is like, wow, you have come a long way and look what the great things that have come from such a challenging time. And she wrote back and said, you need to write a book. And I was like, I think I wrote that down somewhere. Like I had literally not talked about it, thought about it since then. And I found it and screenshotted my notes to her. And she was like, you just have to. So I started writing the book in January and had it to an editor in March. And I could not believe how quickly you and I met, and I was like, I don't even know how long it'll be. I don't know. And you said something that stuck with me. Who says it has to be one way? If you have a story to share, write it. And so from that moment I started writing, and it was flowing so quickly. I mean, I got 2 boys at home, and I would only find like an hour a day, maybe tops. But I would sit down and it just flowed out of me like I wasn't even writing it. It just felt so outer body experience. And I don't know if you've had that same experience, but it was so weird. Honestly, when I like read back through it, I was like, did I write that? Some of those things. And so I had it with an editor, and it could not have been another moment that he couldn't have created better. I found her in Texas through an old coworker of mine, from Pepsi, actually. I had remembered him saying he had self-published, and I just reached out in hopes that he would help me, and he did. He mentored me through the outline and how to get started, and held me accountable. When can you have a couple chapters to me? And that's all it took for me to be able to not let him down, honestly. And that was huge. And so he connected me with this editor, and we chatted a little bit. I was getting some quotes, and she messaged me that same night, and she said, I listened to a couple of your podcast interviews, and my sister and I are adopted, and I have suffered from a chronic illness for over half of my life. Wow. And the search stopped there. I just knew that was it. She was it. And she truly transformed my words. She made me dig deeper than I've ever dug, made me outwardly say things that I've maybe never said out loud. She pushed me to go beyond the surface and brushing over it so quickly. She's like, your story is much deeper than this, and you're brushing over that you almost died like it was like just a normal thing, and you really need to dig deeper. And so the story really encompasses a lot of the stuff we talked about, but goes much deeper into the battles, doctors' notes of what they were seeing, and what the true reality was, seeing their perspective, a lot of my old journal entries in there, and then also how I came out of it and how you can come out of challenging times, because I don't believe there's a single person who isn't currently going through something challenging or has faced something challenging in their life that they probably did forget, or they just put it in the back burner thinking it has nothing to do with how they show up in the day, but it does. And to revisit that and to get through that, that's kind of what the whole book kind of ends up being about. So
what's the name of the book?
It's Battle to Breakthrough.
Yeah. Battle to Breakthrough. And let me guess what is on the cover. I've seen it.
A lotus flower. Yeah. So
you did share it with me.
I was thinking about it, and there's these different sites where they're like, just submit what your book's about, and these artists will come up with a cover and you can choose. And then it popped in my head about the lotus, and I have a lotus flower on my arm, a tattoo I got very soon after I came out of surgery, and I was like, that's it. And the colors of Crohn's and ulcerative colitis are purple. And I met with a local artist. She's so talented, Hannah Stelter. And her whole basis of her art is to be perfectly imperfect. And she doesn't draw anything without scribbles and stuff all over, that it's not these perfect lines. And I thought there was no better fit. And I was right, because she came back with the artwork just this weekend. I am blown away. And it's exactly what I pictured and more. So I could not be happier with that.
So this is being recorded on June 10th, and you'll listen to this whenever you happen to find this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But when will the book be out, and where can we find it?
Yeah, I hopefully have the final artwork this weekend. And so I'm thinking by the 18th, it'll be online on Amazon. And yeah, I've got it.
That's just okay. Like next week. This is awesome, Karli.
So my whole goal was to have this complete, like when back in January, I was like, I would love to have this complete and done by the time I turn 35, which is June 29th. And so the fact that it's actually happening, I'm super thrilled, and I could not be more proud of it. It took me a while to become proud of it, I think. And I don't know what that stems from, really, if it's just opinions of others, I'm not sure. But we literally teach that every day in Bio Girls. And I just said, what's the worst that could happen? And can you live with that? Yeah. So
I have a thought about that.
Yeah.
You said earlier that when you were on the beginning, the trajectory of your career, you said, I got caught up in the ego of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kind of that like imposter syndrome of, I try to keep at the forefront, like my story is God's story. So how can I self-promote this and still be aligned with it? So I'm struggling with that piece of it, which is just an internal struggle, I think. And
so consider this. Ego, the way you described it earlier, is about external validation and looking for that. Ego that would keep you from sharing your story is the same thing. It's ego, but it's small ego. So it's God created you to be a certain way. And if you're trying to be bigger than that, that's big ego. But if you're trying to be smaller than that, that's small ego, which is exactly the same thing. So stepping into that spotlight with your name on it is, allowing things to happen through you, not to you or for you. Because it would be really easy for a person in your position to say, as a victim would, a victim of things, it's easy to say, why did this happen to me? You probably felt that when you were close to death. Anybody would. That's the human part of us. But the spirit part of us would say, okay, it either happened to me, for me, or maybe through me. And maybe what happened for you in the past is now happening through you for your future.
I love that so much, Jody. That is, that's super helpful going into this moment of clicking publish, to be honest. I love that.
Well, I think the world's going to love that. And I think I know it, that your message is going to resonate with so many people in so many ways. You've got adoption, you've got chronic illness, you've got the pandemic, you've got a lot of things. And then the God pieces, the God winks. There's a real story there, Karli, and I'm so excited to help you share it with the world, because this is what we need.
Thank you.
So how would people find you? How can they find the book? How can they find you? What's the best way?
You can find the book on Amazon. If you're local here in Fargo, I will have it at Vintage Point, which is amazing. She's an incredible human being, and it has an amazing store. So that'd be a great place to check out. And then I, on Facebook and Instagram, just Karli Moch, and then also karlimoch.com.
And I'll put that in the show notes so that you know how to spell it, because like me, your name is spelled differently than people might look for. So Karli and Moch. And we'll make sure that people find that. Karli, thank you for taking the time to be with me and for being real and being okay with being real, stepping into that space of being real.
Thank you for creating a platform to do that. So thanks for having me.
It is completely my pleasure. So I will hit stop on the record here somehow. Stop. Yes.